Return to a broken past, a woman's journey through lost love, family secrets, and healing in the shadows of a grand Seoul mansion. A haunting tale of forgiveness, resilience, and rediscovery, amidst silence and rain. The evening air in Seoul was thick with a cool dampness, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked pavement and the distant hum of city life. Yoon So-hyun stepped carefully from the sleek black sedan, the sound of her heels briefly muffled by the wet concrete beneath her feet. She stood still for a moment, absorbing the vastness of the cityscape around her. Skyscrapers reached skyward, their glass facades reflecting the myriad lights of the metropolis. But in the midst of this modern sprawl, the estate she had once called home waited, imposing and silent. Years had passed since she had last crossed these gates. The city had evolved, new buildings had sprung up, streets bustled with unfamiliar faces, and technology had weaved itself deeper into daily life. Yet the estate with its towering iron gates and looming stone mansion seemed frozen in time. The large glass windows caught the dim glow of streetlights, sending fractured light across the wet cobblestones. It was a place out of step with the rhythm of the changing city, a bastion of the past. Her heart tightened with a mixture of reluctance and resolve as she lifted her hand to the gate's cold ironwork. It was a threshold she had avoided for many years, a boundary not only of property but of memories best left buried. Yet here she was, standing on the other side, feeling the heavy weight of everything she had fled, everything she had lost. The mansion's front door opened almost immediately after she pressed the bell. Inside, the silence was profound. The vast rooms were immaculate and grand, but held no warmth. The polished floors gleamed under the soft light of crystal chandeliers, and the thick velvet curtains were drawn, blocking out the world beyond. The scent of polished wood and old leather mingled with something faintly floral, a perfume she recognized but could not name. It was as if the house itself remembered. Madame Han was seated in the main parlor, a figure of dignified authority wrapped in silks that whispered softly with every small movement. Her face was composed, expression unreadable, neither welcoming nor cold, merely acknowledging So-hyun's presence with the kind of reserved acceptance cultivated over years of duty and restraint. There were no words of greeting, no invitation to rest, only a poised silence that conveyed the unspoken, "You are here, but you belong only partially." A few steps away, near the expansive windows that overlooked the estate's gardens, stood Yoon Ji-hoon. He held a cigarette between slender fingers, the ember burning low, sending a thin wisp of smoke curling upward. His posture was rigid, his body taut with restrained emotion. The years had sculpted his face into a sharper, more distant version of the man she once knew, and in his eyes was the quiet resentment of one left behind. His gaze met hers briefly, not with anger, but with the cold reminder of the distance that time and choices had wrought between them. To him, she was still the one who had walked away when there was no room for hesitation. Outside the mansion, in another corner of the city's sprawling chaos, Kim Min-joon sat at his desk. The dim office light cast long shadows across stacks of files and scattered papers. His attention was fixed on a dossier marked with her name, Yoon So-hyun. Her return was no accident, and Min-joon was certain of that. His fingers tapped rhythmically against the desktop as he contemplated the ripple effect her presence might unleash. In a city where old alliances and buried secrets dictated power, her reappearance was a storm gathering strength. The past was never truly buried. It simply waited to be unearthed. Nearby, Kang Han-ol nursed a drink at the dimly lit bar, fingers drumming lightly on the counter. Word of So-hyun's return had begun to circulate in hushed conversations among those who understood the intricate dance of family loyalties and unspoken grudges. Han-ol was fascinated by the shadows that clung to her name, fragments of a story told in silences and side glances. There was something beyond the surface, an unresolved tension that called to him like a mystery begging to be unraveled. He sensed she was not here merely to revisit old wounds, but to confront something far more profound. Rain began falling steadily, each drop tapping softly against the mansion's tall windows, blurring the lights beyond into streaks of muted color. So-hyun paused to listen to the familiar rhythm, a grounding sound amidst the storm within her. She had thought herself prepared to face what she had left behind, but now, inside these walls heavy with history, the weight of time pressed down with unexpected force. The fractures in relationships, the cold silences, and the memories steeped in pain had not softened with absence. They were embedded in the very fabric of the house. She moved through the hallways, footsteps echoing faintly against marble and wood. Each room held a fragment of her past, a chair where laughter once bloomed, a painting on the wall that had witnessed long-forgotten arguments, the faint imprint of a childhood that seemed to belong to someone else. The grand staircase curved with the same elegant sweep, the chandeliers still suspended like frozen stars, but the warmth that should have filled these spaces was missing, replaced by a hollow stillness. Before a particular door, she stopped, hand resting on the smooth wood. It was the study her father had occupied, a room untouched by time, where decisions had been made that shaped the family's destiny and hers. The faint scent of old paper and polished mahogany drifted from within. This was a sanctuary of thought and power, a place where she had often sat as a child, watching her father with a mix of admiration and fear. Inside, the room was exactly as she remembered. The large desk stood regal, the surface organized meticulously, books lining the shelves like silent witnesses to history. Her gaze fell on the chair, worn slightly by years of use, yet commanding in its presence. It was the seat where her father had once held court, a man whose approval she had sought endlessly, only to realize in time that it was a prize forever beyond her grasp. The doorframe cast a shadow as Yoon Ji-hoon stepped quietly into the threshold. His presence was a sudden intrusion, filling the room with tension. He did not cross the boundary, but his eyes swept over the study before settling on her. Words were unnecessary. The silence carried the weight of years of pain, regret, and distance. She had left, and he had remained. That divide, she knew, would never fully close. The evening waned, and the mansion grew still once more, settling into the calm that follows the storm. So-hyun lingered in the study long after others had retreated to their rooms. The rain had softened outside, leaving a misty haze over the gardens and the city beyond. The lights of Seoul shimmered faintly in the distance, obscured by the wet veil of night. She was back, but the purpose of her return was unclear even to herself. Was it to reclaim what had been lost in the years of absence, or to find the strength to finally release the ghosts that haunted her? The house held no answers, only the echoes of the past. But inside her, a quiet determination took root, preparing her for the journey that lay ahead, a path through memory, reconciliation, and the difficult search for forgiveness. The following days unfolded slowly, each one weighed down by the dense fog of unspoken truths and lingering questions. So-hyun moved through the mansion with a sense of dislocation, as though she were a ghost revisiting a place she once inhabited but no longer belonged to. The grand rooms seemed to watch her, silent witnesses to the years lost and the silence that had grown between the people who once called this house home. The distance between her and Ji-hoon remained palpable, a chasm carved deep by absence and bitterness. Though they shared the same walls, the same air, their worlds had become irreconcilable. His quiet resentment hung like a shadow behind every glance, and she carried the weight of guilt that settled like dust on everything she touched. Neither of them spoke of the past, but it clung to them, an invisible barrier neither dared to cross. Madame Han continued to move through the mansion with her usual grace, a figure embodying control and endurance. She observed So-hyun with a measured gaze, acknowledging her presence without allowing any warmth to enter the space between them. The old matriarch's silence was more telling than any words. It was a reminder that forgiveness, if it came at all, would not be given freely. So-hyun found herself retreating often to her father's study, drawn to the place where so many crucial decisions had been made. It was there that she wrestled with the tangled emotions inside her, the longing for approval, the pain of abandonment, and the heavy burden of expectations. The bookshelves, the polished desk, and the faint scent of leather-bound volumes became her refuge from the storm of memories swirling in her mind. Outside the mansion's protective walls, the city pulsed with life, indifferent to her inner turmoil. Streets bustled with people chasing dreams, lovers sharing stolen moments, and strangers crossing paths with no knowledge of the invisible battles being fought in quiet estates like hers. So-hyun felt the vast gulf between her private grief and the world's relentless forward motion. Min-jun's investigations unfolded in parallel, a web of connections slowly drawing him closer to the truth. His office was a haven of files and secrets, each paper a fragment of the story she had tried to leave behind. The more he uncovered, the more it became clear that So-hyun's return was not merely a personal reckoning, but a pivotal move in a larger game of power and loyalty. The past had roots that extended deep into the present, threatening to upheave carefully constructed facades. Hanul's curiosity grew with every whispered hint and half-told tale. He watched the intricate dance of alliances and resentments from the shadows, piecing together the puzzle that So-hyun's presence represented. To him, she was more than a figure from old stories. She was a catalyst, a force that might tip the balance in ways no one anticipated. Days melted into nights, and So-hyun grappled with the ghosts of her choices. She remembered the night she left, the feeling of finality as she placed the letter on the kitchen counter, the silence that followed when he found it, and the absence that had settled like a permanent winter. She thought of the woman whose place she had never truly held, the woman who had always been a silent rival in a story neither had chosen. In the quiet moments, she imagined the life that might have been, one where her footsteps did not echo through empty halls, where laughter and forgiveness filled the spaces between people rather than walls. But reality was stubborn, and the mansion's cold stones whispered reminders of what had been lost. One evening, as rain began again to fall softly against the windows, Sohyun stood in the garden, the wet earth releasing its earthy scent into the cool air. The droplets traced paths down leaves and petals, a gentle cleansing that mirrored the slow thawing inside her heart. She knew that forgiveness would not come all at once, that some wounds would remain tender long after the storm passed. But beneath the surface, beneath the weight of regret and silence, there was a fragile hope. She was not the same person who had walked away years before. Time had carved new lines on her face and etched deeper resolve in her soul. The mansion was no longer just a prison of memories, but a place where healing might begin. The family ties, strained and frayed, still held threads worth mending, if only she could find the courage to reach out. In the distance, the city lights flickered like stars caught in a web of mist. The future was uncertain, a path winding through shadows and light. But for the first time since her return, Sohyun felt the faintest stirring of peace, a quiet acceptance that while the past shaped her, it did not have to define her. As the rain softened to a drizzle and the night deepened, the house breathed around her, old, worn, but still standing. And within its walls, Yoon So-hyun prepared to face what lay ahead, ready to reclaim her story or let it go, one step at a time.